Okay, well, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today. This is, I think, our 14th week of events in association with the MAG. I think the vast majority of you have been on calls over the last few weeks, but for those that haven't, just a quick reminder that to keep you muted during the course of the call, but if you've got any questions to use, at the bottom of the Zoom link, there's a little box that says chat. Please, by all means, share any questions or insights or any ideas you've got as we go through the call. I had a number of questions sent to me before the call today. We will record it so that we can share it with members that weren't able to join us today. But before I hand over to the guys who are going to be talking to you about their experiences of COVID and what they've done as agencies, I thought I'd just sort of ponder a moment. Obviously, there's been a fair amount of activity in the last 24 hours. Some of you will have seen that the British Medical Journal have published a letter or sent a letter to the Prime Minister with regard to the need to prevent further loss of life. That's in light, obviously, of the sweeping changes that Boris announced yesterday. I think there's still concern that certainly the Royal College of Surgeons, nursing, physicians and GPs in general about the possibility of, obviously, of further outbreaks. But with the changes that were announced yesterday, we'll now be able to actually get back to the pubs, which I think is hugely positive, back into restaurants, cinemas, and in my case, most importantly, hairdressers, on the 4th of July, which I think is probably good news for business and good news for the economy in general. The 2 metre social distancing rules have obviously been replaced now by the 1 metre plus rule. Meaning that we obviously need to continue to try and stay 2 meters apart where possible. But if needs be, then you can operate within 1 meter. Obviously, that has implications for us as agencies. Both the Government Chief Scientific Advisor, Sir Patrick Vallance, and the Chief Medical Officer, Chris Whitty, have stressed that PM's risk-free proposals aren't exactly risk-free, so obviously they're distancing themselves a little bit from government and making sure that they don't get caught on that one. But I think we're all recognising, as we look to other markets around the world, that the pandemic basically has come back in other markets, but it tends to be highly localised. And for that reason, one of the things that we've been thinking about in response to questions over the last couple of weeks is how can we help support you as you drift back into what I call mixed working situations. And by that, what I mean is a number of you have suggested that you're going to continue to work from home. We were having a conversation just before we started this call about people building little office areas at home and rooms in the garden or converting their garages to space. But equally too, a number of you have recognised the need for creating hubs back in your office environments, particularly for younger people that need to be able to connect and still obviously learn from more experienced people. And therefore, we have what I call a kind of a home and away situation where people will take on a flexible working pattern and decide how they want to work based on what's best for them. And for that reason, what we've done is we've put together a package to be able to support and help you all this time, working with Reality HR, who've put together a really useful document on home working and the legalities and what you have to do to make sure that all of your home workers are safe and that they actually have the appropriate equipment and chairs and all the other bits and pieces that they will need. And I'll be sharing that with you. And they're also going to offer a pimento discount to members if they want to take them up on that offer. We've also put together an equipment supply arrangement with a company called Tenya, who I'll send out a brochure later on, but in essence, they will provide all the screenings you need, any sort of signage that one needs, sanitary products and so on and so forth. And equally too, Proco, one of our members, as you know them, are doing branded PPE and signage. We also have a cloud-based storage solution through Base Media Cloud for people who can work from home and then draw down data from cloud, making it more secure and making you more flexible. And lastly, we've engaged an IT company to help us with help desks, hard and software, and also to provide engineers. I think the only thing we haven't been able to do so far is find our home office equipment supply. Apparently, if you want a decent seat in the home Apparently, you can't get one for love nor money. There's been an 18,000% increase in the demand for decent chairs at home. So there you go. All that information will be coming across to you in the next couple of days, and do with it what you want. In the meantime, we have, as I say, 3 Pimento agencies with us today, each of whom have had to adapt and learn and develop their proposition, particularly now as we go into what I call the new economy reality of where we are. The independents, as we know, have always been quicker to adapt, and COVID obviously has been no exception to that. It will be quite interesting this afternoon. We've got Sir Martin Sorrell on the call at 5 p.m, who is now an independent. So we'll be seeing from him and hearing from him as to what he believes the future independent agencies are. But I've been super impressed with the way our members have adapted to this new environment, and many actually are doing rather well. The 3 agencies that will be presenting to us, we have their illustrious leaders with us. CDS is an independent communications agency whose core focus is on content, insight, digital print technology. Its purpose is to make a positive difference to the health, wealth and safety of the UK, so they're in the right space. They have an impressive turnover, 35 million a year, so it makes them one of the larger agencies within the network, and they employ around 180 people across 8 offices. Mark Gair is their MD, and he's worked in the industry for nearly 30 years and worked in various global businesses, including Pitney Bowes, Communis and Office Depot Group, and he joined CDS in April 2017. We've got Sammy Mansourpour, who is the Managing Director and Joint Founder of award-winning Bath-based agency UK, possibly the best agency name, I think. Apart from London, we've got a very good one, actually. They are proudly independent. They work with a very broad range. They basically work foremost, obviously, in the interests of their clients, and with a 30-some team of experienced leading lights and young talent. Sammy started his agency career working for various multinationals, including AMV and Saatchi, and then he joined a digital startup in 2001. He sold the business and later founded Agency UK in 2010. And Agency UK is ranked the UK's #1 leading independent agency by the drum. Finally, Mr. B and Friends is a leading independent brand expertise firm based in Bristol. Today, the agency employs 35 people, has income around about £3 million, and they deliver brand expertise in a number of sectors with a particular focus on financial services, technology, travel, and hospitality. Obviously, those last 2 sectors have been hard hit through the COVID, and we saw that last week on our deep dive into the travel industry. They believe that brand is a transformational business tool that delivers competitive advantage to organisations both here and across the world. And they've helped to transform the futures of a number of PLCs, corporates, SMEs, and scale-up businesses. Simon Barbato, who is their founder and CEO, is a classically trained account handler. They still exist, which is great, because I'm one of those too. And his career started at AMV subsidiary McBain, Nolan Johnson, and then he worked at brand consultancy Light & Coley, and then he really cut his teeth on brand strategy. And he started his agency, his first agency, in 1998. Some bumps in the road, launched Mr. B and Friends from his spare bedroom in 2006, which is where he is now. So there you go. What goes around turns around, eh? In 2016, Simon won the Institute of Directors SME Director of the Year Award, and in 2018, he was voted a top 10 Inspirational Agency Leader Award by the Drum. So great team of people to help us today. Really excited to have them on board. What we're going to do is basically have short presentations from each of them, and then we'll open it up to questions. So we'll start, if I may, please, with Mark Gair. Mark, let me just take you off mute, sir. Oh, it's not unmuting. Hang on. Why is that not unmuting?
There you go.
You're there. Brilliant. Well done.
Joys of technology.
Absolutely.
Okay, let me just share. Okay, so you should be able to see that.
Yeah, we can, sir. Yeah, that's brilliant.
Yeah. Thanks, Stephen. I share your pain with the haircuts. My situation is my twin daughters at 15 and my 13-year-old happily take the shears to it and compete for the privilege. So I'm looking forward to that area of the economy reopening. But just taking a quick moment to share CDS, because I think it's probably fair to say, unless any of my colleagues are on the group, I suspect none of you have heard of CDS, and that's not unusual. We fly under the radar of a lot of our peer group, but as Stephen said, quite a significant agency delivering some great areas of interest in our services. So we class ourselves as a communications agency, and that's vague for various purposes. But I think what was fundamental back in 2018 was the work we did around our strategy to focus on these core services. I mean, these are the services that we provide at the highest level, but they go fairly deep in terms of each area. Whether it's insight content, looking at things like creative, editorial, inclusivity, accessibility, we cover a lot of broad range of services that supports really the two fundamental service pillars in digital and print. Our legacy goes back 25 years, which is fundamental around the print state, but I think it's fair to say that we have developed our digital capability over the years and have got a real prominent position in regards to being seen as a brilliant technical agency. The fifth pillar in technology is really where we underpin the business by the agnostic position on technology that supports all the pillars. And that can be anything around process improvement, digital platforms, as well as other technologies that support our client need, as well as what we need as an agency to deliver. When you look at our client base, just as a mix, Stephen called it out, and I'll come on to the whole positive difference purpose, is really to drive that wealth, health and safety of UK citizens. We do only operate in the UK, and that's been a fundamental focus for the past 5 years. But the type of business that we mix, 80% of our client base is in the public sector. So that's both a risk and an opportunity. And in 2018, we really focused, I locked my team and various parts of the business into a room to drive a clear strategy around what was the purpose and the position of CDS moving forward. When we look at our type of client, they range in terms of the services. So we have been responsible for delivering the Metropolitan Police intranet and public-facing site. And that's diverted into helping MOPAC and the Cabinet around digital policing program to deliver a program called Single Online Home. Single Online Home is effectively taking a crime reporting solution that we built and rolling that out as a platform to 43 forces. Huge amount of work to do that, and that's something we're incredibly proud of. If you think of that in a PLC state, that's the parent being MOPAC sat in government, actually trying to operate in 43 operating companies with different people, responsibility, structure, processes, and we're halfway through that program. Their statement, not mine, they reckon that's the biggest change in their communication platform since the introduction of the 999 call ability in 1976. So quite dramatic digital transformation. Other clients include Resilience Direct, where we are focused on delivering a platform that allows first responders, army, police, ambulance to major events and situations in the UK. That will be a terrorist event, flooding, or other kinds of events whereby first responders need to act accordingly and come together to ensure that they manage the situation effectively across those different disciplines. And then the report and data goes up to COBRA level so the Prime Minister can be briefed accordingly. And they're using our platform and information. To where the print channel becomes relevant. So for Transport for London, we're responsible for producing those beautiful little tube maps that seem to only go to other people taking them as a souvenir. Or baby on board batches where somebody is asking for the privilege of getting a seat on a tube. So we produce all the marketing execution for the likes of Transport for London. So quite a diverse range of clients and solutions across those services. But I think just to frame the conversation of what I'm going to talk about in terms of the impact, we've worked really hard to release our new position. And one thing that's become very apparent that has existed in all clients is the level of complexity within the clients we deal with. And our purpose, the saying we have when we get involved in an opportunity is, if it's big, ugly, and difficult, then often it suits CDS. And our purpose really is to simplify that complexity. As most agencies, we've got a purpose around our process to ensure that we use straight thinking to get to the end result in the most effective and efficient way. And ultimately, it all boils down to the outcome. And this is something we've honed in on over the last couple of years around truly making a positive difference. I think it's fair to say that our client base and the things that I've touched on in what we deliver truly does make a positive difference. It's a very easy statement to make, but I think it's something that really tests us internally, which has further tested us when the pandemic hit around how we drive the business forward. So everything that we do from an internal perspective, it's got to have a benefit to our client, to the end audience of the client, and for the agency. And that's really our metric in regards to what we do or don't do driving it forward. So just taking kind of Stephen's lead on, okay, so being an independent, what does that look like? And learning and winning in a lockdown environment. I'm not going to sit here for 1 minute and say that we haven't been impacted by this. We've definitely not been protected. And when you look at the services that we sit across, the type of digital programs that we're involved in have longevity. So you can imagine they're a program of events that we can see through a period of time. But for our print channel, where we're focused on trying to drive both channels, and print is still very important to many businesses, it's very easy for brands and government bodies just to turn that off. So for example, in our university space, universities just literally closed down, and we saw that sort of revenue just deplete completely. We've also been impacted in regards to the investments that we were making. So we were at the cusp of actually making an acquisition on an agency in Leeds. And our first and foremost change within the agency when this hit was to protect cash. Suspect it was the majority of people's position, and we were about to spend a chunk of cash on this acquisition, strategically very aligned, but it didn't make sense at that time, so we paused. We also were about to go into a new building, so we bought a building down by the canal in Leeds as our head office. We've got 8 locations, so that was going to be our prime site. And again, we put a pause on that just to make sure that we could protect our cash. And thankfully, it's now in a position whereby we've unlocked that and we've started the build again. So there's all kinds of impacts that we've seen from a monetary value, from a strategic point of view. But I think the learnings that we've experienced over the period of time has been far greater than just saying it's about how we mobilize the agency. Ultimately, our first port of call was to protect staff. And quite interestingly, if you think of the client base that we have, the risk that we had is that being predominantly office-based with a level of flexibility, we've got secure lines managing data for the likes of the MOD and police. And you can't simply just rip that out and say, go work at home. So we had a lot of planning to follow in regards to being able to kind of migrate everybody to working at home, and we did that pretty quickly. We had the client risk, so adapting very quickly to our client environments and demands. That was something that we had to do very, very effectively and quickly, and that's something that we're proud about. But also tracking the impact, the learnings around why was our clients' change and need different, and actually understanding that, even if it was a negative, not all negatives are negative, and just understanding how we could reconnect with those clients and actually drive the positive outcome. That was around having deeper conversations of their pain, their change, and how we could help them. Also, the learnings internally was around idea generation, around smart ideas to actually change the current situation, making sure that we didn't fail our clients, but also making sure that daily engagement was effective, and driving that agenda forward. And then ultimately about kind of driving the whole purpose around the agency, which we were firmly in a growth mode. We had a brilliant 2019 and exceeded our plan, but really the winning is not about just new business generation. It was about ensuring our client success continued and the ability to help staff through this period. Like we are today, my team, the broader business, are on team calls or Zoom calls every day, and I know what we all feel about that, and it becomes exhausting. So the well-being and energy and the winning in that environment was really important, and making sure that we were actually checking in with staff and ensuring that we could maintain the engagement across the agency. We did all kinds of things like team challenges, gamifying competitiveness around the new business generation. We've got quite a big team in regards to the commercial team. So we've got a 35 strong commercial team, and you can imagine they're quite hungry in regards to driving the agenda. So it's how could we keep that velocity in that team? And I think just really what we focused on was accountable adaptation. How do we change our agency in the current circumstance? And a common term used in the Pimento group around pivoting. I think what it came back to was really just us pausing and checking to make sure that our strategy and our focus was right. And what it really came down to was the client and the new generation around prospects was making sure that our brand values sat firmly in our decisioning. This is something we're incredibly proud of, something we've worked really hard to get to a point. We didn't have any values 3 years ago, which is quite extraordinary for an agency that's lasted 25 years. But for us, it was really how do we make those decisions? And when you're tested in a commercial pressure, when actually any order would actually be suffice, making sure that it serves the purpose of our purpose and our brand values was really the focus. So we tested that internally. And what we talk about really is having positive velocity. How do we maintain that growth irrespective of its size and the impact? How do we continue that path? The focus on all our decisioning is on growth, whether that's brand, whether that's tech, whether that's team investment, whether that's development around the agency. It's all got to sit around that purpose. So there's been a lot going on. 14 weeks, here we are. Actually, what we're seeing is green shoots of change. So some of the university space is starting to come back online. Our clients in the main have actually powered through a lot of it. But also what we're seeing is other sectors that we're focused on, as we've got a clear strategy on what we're defining as our growth plans, are starting to come alive again, which is great to see. And that's me, Stephen. So hopefully that gives some insight into what we're doing. Stephen, you're on mute.
There you go. Only been doing this 14 weeks. Thank you very much indeed, Mark. That was very insightful, and it's really interesting, given obviously your government profile and government work. You've been, I guess, at the cutting edge of actually, I imagine, a changing daily brief with them. So we'll come back to questions at the end, and I'm very interested to understand how that's worked, assuming we talk about that.
Yeah.
Looking forward now to Sammy. Sammy, where are you? There you are. Let me just unmute you. That's this normal game we're playing. I'll leave you to unmute yourself, Sammy.
There we go. All good?
All good, mate. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay. Hi, everyone. So I'll keep this bit about us really short. I'm sure if you guys are interested, you can go to our website and find out a little bit more about us. But we are a full-service integrated communications agency. We've got 30 people, and by way of being integrated, it means that we have the core competencies and teams full-time in-house. That's from strategy through to media, PR and social, creative, and digital technologies. Now, that presents in itself a potential issue for any mid-sized integrated agency, in that you've got a number of mouths to feed at any one time. So any type of bump, like the C19 bump that we're seeing at the moment, can have quite a profound impact on the business. So what I thought was I would take you through the different steps, as to the different reveals as to how we were impacted as a business and what we did at each of those points as a management team. To give you a little bit of background, I won't spend too much time on this. I know that Stephen, you've covered this off, but I founded AUK in 2008. I've been MDing it since 2010. But I think what's important to note is that we started really around a digital hub. So my background is digital strategy. So everything that we've done, the heart of the business since 2008, has been digitally centric. That means that, and really that's not just our philosophy, that's a reflection of where our clients spend their time and their money. And that's been quite important over this period of time. So what the fuck happened? Well, I'll disclose some trends. The green is 2019, so a steady growth for February, March and April. Everything was happy in 2019, and as per 2020, we were building a significant amount of growth on last year's revenue. So, being 30 people, we do about 4.4 million a year. So the growth that we're seeing in this particular in quarter one, which can be quite a quiet quarter, quieter than the summer very often, was quite interesting. So we were all really excited. Then COVID-19 happened. We obviously all started to get alerts at the beginning of March, but it didn't really derail anything at that point. So revenues were a little below target, but they were still way above what 2019 was. It was a reflection of commitment from our existing clients, and our new business pipeline was doing well. But April, it really came off the rails. So April revenues dropped dramatically. But having said that, we have been seeing growth in May, June, and beyond. So it is bouncing back. I think I'm going to subscribe to the Martin Sorrell school of thought. Q1 was probably all right. Q2 was a bit shit. Q3 will be challenging. Q4 we should bounce back. So I think that's where I'm going to place my mindset, and we're going to sort of plan for that. So what did we think would happen? The truth is we didn't know. Nobody knew. And anyone that says they knew or plan or could plan at any point is fibbing. My experience in talking to a lot of my friends that own agencies and businesses in other sectors as well, it was just purely a case of finding data points throughout the journey fairly quickly, and then making decisions based on confidence going forward and potential impact in the immediate term. So we did know 9 things. We sort of set 9 things out, and these really helped us inform our decision making throughout the process. The first thing is we wouldn't act fast, irrationally, or panic. You read a lot of information about cut deep, cut fast, make the redundancies, protect the cash. Those are all important at certain times, but our experience has been that the recovery to that is often harder, and it can have a longer lasting impact on the business and affect the growth negatively going forward. You lose more money going forward than you would in the short term. So we decided very early on, we're not going to make redundancies. We're going to work our way through this. We're going to ride it through. We are comfortable being independent, particularly, and this is a strength I think all independents share, all those that have been around for a while. We're comfortable that we can lose money. We will lose money. It's a given. And we will buy our way out of this situation. So having the resource and the capital to be able to do that is critical. because ultimately, whatever money we're losing in the short term, it's going to take time to recoup, over a year, most definitely. We're independent, so we can do what we want, and this allows us to take risks and chances, and it also allows us to move more quickly, and it enables us to change our minds. So we take comfort in that fact, and having been in large network agencies before and big corporate businesses, you can't do those sorts of things. And I think that actually these types of situations can play very favourably to independent agencies. We're confident that we're smart enough to find more business. There's plenty of business out there. There's always business out there. And it's harder to find, and you've got to root around a lot more. But all of us are small agencies. We should be able to go and find enough business to get ourselves out of a hole. Again, an issue that the larger network agencies, they really struggle with that. Their cash burn is magnificent. Having set the agency up in January 2008, that was at the start of the 2008 recession. So this isn't our first rodeo. And although we recognise it's easier to start and grow through a recession than to come into one full fat, we kind of know how the market behaved then, and assumed that the market would behave in a similar way this time around. And although the timescales have been compressed this time around, I think that's broadly been true. We're hoping the recovery will be a bit faster. And ultimately, we're privileged. We're privileged to be able to be making these decisions. We're privileged to have our health. We're privileged to be able to have that safety net because we're not a startup. And we need to leverage that privilege to our advantage and look at all the positives and maintain that positive mindset as you carry your team through this. So what actually happened, this was the crux of it, and we broadly expected this to a point. Our retained clients all carried on. Most of them are larger brands. Most of them will look at it as an opportunity to get stuff done that they otherwise didn't have the time to do. Or they are looking at it as an opportunity to buy market share, and so their business is kind of business as usual. So the retainers all stay in place. The retained clients stay there. Work may be deferred, but the retainers are there. Our retained client projects, so any projects or any additional revenues associated to a retained client, continued in the main. There was a bit of toing and froing, and some of it was delayed. Some decision making was delayed because of availability of resource. But in the main, all of those projects stayed on queue. What didn't stay on queue was the one-off client project. So anyone that's come in for a one-off project that wants it delivered and then is unlikely to be an ongoing client. Apart from one, they all switched off. Everything switched off. They considered that unnecessary spend, as opposed to a retained client that sees it as part of their ongoing business as usual activities. New business went completely silent for 1 week and then restarted. So it's almost like the pipeline was all put on hold. And I think that's largely down to the fact that anything that was tender related, pitch related during that time just had to be put on hold, and people stopped answering the phones. However, that only lasted a week, and looking back on it, we have pitched every week in lockdown. Some of that is completely new inquiries, and others are just turning through the existing pipeline that we had built up over the last 6 months. So every week in lockdown, we served a pitch. And we also won our biggest client in lockdown. And that one was actually from cold, not converting through a 6-month pipeline. That was completely cold, which is a coup. I think there is obviously a dollop of luck in there, but our philosophy is that you've got to be on all the time. You've got to be everywhere all of the time, and you can't relax. And if you do that, you'll always have sufficient flexibility and sufficient buffer for the things that drop out, and the things that you don't think are going to land often do. So by luck or by judgment, we've seen a real focus back to digital and social quickly taking centre stage again. They didn't really leave centre stage, but there was definitely, over the last 2 years, there's been a lot more dabbling by our client brands in TV and out of home. and generally looking at other medias, mostly because they've capped out the online channels. So they were looking for volume and capacity. That all switched off pretty much, and they all went back to their digital heartlands. However, there was an increase in online usage. There's an increase in capacity for many of our clients in their certain sectors, particularly like direct-to-consumer e-com. So that wasn't surprising, and it made perfect sense. What we did feel coming through this is we've always had discussions about being niche. I mean, we're an integrated agency, so by way of being an integrated agency, our service offering is not niche; it's full service. We do operate in 4 sectors specifically, and that spreads our risk. But health and well-being being one of those sectors, it's been extremely lucrative. The direct-to-consumer brands that we work with on the direct-to-consumer retail channels have been very, very lucrative. Anything that we had in the leisure and the travel just stopped, and that was expected. But then the other things, which are B2B and the fintech, and really the global multinationals, all carried on as usual. They were running on 5-10 year plans anyway. So for them, very little difference. And no recession is a major curveball to them unless their share price drops. D2C was hungry for growth. Their issue is supply chain. So there was no question they were going to keep coming for the marketing efforts, but the supply chain is what really squashed their opportunities. And we don't work with startups and we don't work with crowdfunders. So again, too high risk for us. And I would imagine that any agency that is built around those types of smaller businesses or newer businesses would be struggling. High street retail. Well, we're working with a number of companies. We don't work with bricks and mortar retail. We work with bricks and mortar retail who also have online and offerings. We don't work with sole bricks and mortar, with the exception of the Sitner Group, which is Car Shop. However, our piece with them is a digital transformation piece that we've been working with them for a couple of years. And for them, it's transforming they're the UK's, Car Shop is the UK's largest car supermarket, and they're looking to move to a completely online self-serve model, and removing their 46 showrooms eventually, or certainly repurposing them, service centres or whatever it might be. So that work stream stays pretty consistent, albeit they are, seriously, the car market took a right kicking, didn't it, in March, and I think continues to take a kicking at the moment until the production lines are fully operational and they start serving the demand again. New business continues. I mentioned the leisure clients, but certainly with food and drink, they were very buoyant and very active. So we've certainly felt that it's been paid to serve those 4 sectors, or any 4 sectors actually, as long as you've got that diversity and that spread. Some of the activity that we ran just before and have continued running through the kind of C19 period and lockdown, as you can see, all sorts of charities jumping on and activating a lot of the food and drink stuff. So it has been busy. A lot of the medical clients as well have really been taking the opportunity to get spend out there. So we are obviously now at the sort of end of that part of this, and now looking forward, how's this going to shape how we work, or how agencies work, or more importantly, how our clients and our staff expect to work going forward. So we've got some predictions. Whether they'll come true or not, we're not sure. Some of them are more obvious than others. Agency people and a conscientious culture are more important to clients, and they will become more important to clients. I think this is a real opportunity for independents to shine. The larger networks, brands have seen a lot of the larger networks take out entire teams, furlough entire teams, and that leaves them with very little consistency. And they will see a lot of redundancies, I think, in the near future. So that human contact and that real understanding of those businesses and those sectors will become more important in the short term, I think. We think that there's going to be much more need for partnership service offerings, and they'll become much more centralised. I mean, we already do have a partnership programme. We're well aware with 30 people and being integrated. There are lots of specialists that we don't deploy or retain on a daily basis. So we've always been looking at expanding our partnerships, but I think that's going to become even more important. I think that we'll see a lot of niche providers probably signing up to a lot more fixed term contracts with agencies and organisations. Flexible working's always been offered, and it's always been a kind of half-hearted expectation, I think, in the agency world. I think we are most certainly seeing it as a firm expectation now. People will expect to be able to work from home a few days a week. And sustainability of a business is certainly much more important than the environmental impact. So we have seen, particularly with the new clients that we've won, there is, with the larger ones, they always ask about your environmental impact, but they're very focused on your robustness as a business, your sustainability as a business. Are you going to be around in 3 to 6 months if they sign you up? Risk mitigation from the procurement department is more than anything, I should imagine. I don't believe you can build an agency culture over Zoom. I think it's fine if you're a group of freelancers, and that's been fine. I think we're very capable of using Zoom. We're very able to use it and deploy it, but everything on Zoom is too much. Everything in the office is probably too much. We need to find a happy medium here, and I think we will do. So for that reason, I don't think agencies will be forgoing their offices anytime soon, although they might be using them in a slightly different way. We're certainly going to be using part of it as a bit of a drop-in centre, and we're going to be reconfiguring it both to adhere to the what is now the 1 metre rule, but also if this or should this happen again, we want to be prepared that people don't suddenly have to jump ship and leave the building for 3 months. We don't believe that a lot of the press, a lot of the media around the economy, the World Economic Forum, and a lot of the news that's come out necessarily dictates our economy. I think for small agencies, small business, there's a lot of excuses. The truth is, there is business out there. It's just a bit harder to find. You may have to ring 5 people instead of 3, but there's still business and there's work. You just got to roll your sleeves up and get out there. And I don't think that's ever been any different. Agencies will not lead the marketing industry. I don't believe agencies have led the marketing industry for quite some time, in truth. I think we like to think so. I think it's quite introspective. I think that brands are far more sophisticated around their business models than just the marketing aspect of it. And I think that a lot of the innovation that we've seen in marketing has come from brands in recent years, not come from agencies themselves. But that doesn't necessarily mean a bad thing for agencies. It just means that we've got to get with the program. We've got to be robust. We've got to be more flexible, and we've got to be able to take on a challenge and probably work and deliver what we do in a slightly different way. So far less cookie cutter approaches from agencies, much more strategic thinking is going to be coming out of that. And I think the final thing is that the money grabbing agencies, there are agencies out there that are siloed around cost centers. They are sometimes the smaller ones, but tend to be the big ones. Certainly the network agencies. I do think they are genuinely becoming a bit of a turn-off for brands. Certainly 2 of the brands that we've won in the last 3 months have moved from large network agencies for exactly those reasons. And it's not that an agency is money grabbing. It's that's probably a bit clickbaity of me. I think what they're not seeing is and recognizing is the value that they're getting. They're not getting senior talent working on their business. They're not getting a breadth of expertise without being banded around to either different teams or different organizations within the network. So continuity and flow is disrupted, and speed to deliver is a real problem for them. It's a much more agile world, and we know everybody wants everything tomorrow. It's not necessarily possible, but by next week might be. By next month isn't acceptable. So discomfort and disgruntled service levels have definitely cropped up, and they've become much more prevalent at this time. I think we've seen a few brands actually take the opportunity during this time to end contracts and go, right, okay, we're gonna streamline a bit, and that doesn't mean spending less money. It just means getting more value for the money that is spent. So that's me really. I think I'll hand back over to you, Stephen. Happy to answer any questions if anyone's got any.
Thank you, Sammy. That was very, very insightful and particularly useful to actually have some predictions as to where the market's going. Simon, I suspect you concur with a number of those views, but perhaps not. Hand over to you, if I may.
Thank you. Thank you. Let me just get my screen up. Okay, thanks, Stephen. Thanks for having me. Good morning, everybody. So I'm Simon Barbato. I'm the founder and CEO of Mr. B and Friends. I know a few of you on the call today have come across us before or met me. But for those that haven't, I'll just give a quick introduction, and then I'm going to spend the next sort of 10 minutes talking about really the last 14 weeks as we see it, the next 14 weeks, and really what we've learned during this period, which has been quite extraordinary. That's something that I haven't seen for a while, which is where we work. And we operate right from the centre of Bristol, next to Bristol Templemead Templemead Station. And we've got a 6,500 square feet office, which is very, very beautiful, very premium and very empty at the moment, which is giving me lots of cause for concern. But I'll come on to that in just a second. So as Stephen said in the introduction, our belief is that brand is a transformational business tool. We have been in this market since we opened the doors in 2006. This is an area of expertise that myself and my business partner, Steve Richardson, have been developing, and our entire agency resource is set up to help brands to create that competitive advantage in their own markets. What people come to us for is relatively common, actually. The organisations that we work with tend to have an issue that they either know that they have an issue, or it's an unknown issue, and they ask us to diagnose what that problem is. And typically speaking, our engagement will start with brand strategy and then move into brand identity. But as part of our agency process, and with 35 full-time members of staff and a bunch of friends as well that we call on, that type of engagement isn't enough to sustain us. So we do have a much broader capability. Brand experience is something that we've been investing significantly in over the last sort of 7 or 8 years, and that's everything from user experience, customer experience, digital environments, and even environmental design and branding. We do a significant amount of work around brand culture, and we've done some award-winning programs for organisations such as Intercontinental Hotel Group, for Principality Building Society, and a number of other organisations where we actually look after their internal communications, their employee value proposition, or employer brand. And this is an area, certainly in the service business, which is hugely important to generate a groundswell of support behind the brand, so the brand doesn't just exist in the marketing department. Obviously, communications is hugely important, and this gives us a very long tail sort of relationship with our clients around campaigns, brand communications, and design and marketing collateral content, that sort of thing as well. Sort of stuff that you'd expect any agency to be able to produce. And then we also measure impact as well, and we have a number of diagnostic tools that help us to measure brand health, campaign metrics, customer experience metrics, and staff engagement as well. So our sort of positioning is all around brand expertise, but it does branch out into various streams of work. This is the sort of wall of fame, I suppose, and we don't work with all of these guys all of the time, but a significant amount of well-known brands in there, as well as some interesting scale-ups and SMEs that we also work with. And we don't really have a prescriptive approach. I think that you know, if we have a if there's a really good cultural fit with the client, a good chemistry, a good skills fit, and the commercials work for us, then we're happy to engage. And of course, you know, we're always open to you know, speaking to organisations, PLCs and multinationals, but they don't dominate our client portfolio. And our strategic intent is to always to identify the category conformers in any sort of vertical sector, the category leaders, and then our ambition, of course, is always to try to create a brand leadership position for the organization that we're working for. And that's basically an interesting premise, because you don't necessarily have to be the biggest or the or have the most revenue or the biggest scale or reach within a category to be the brand leader. And on a number of occasions, our work has helped our clients to achieve that level. Okay, so that's a little bit of an introduction. So what has the last 14 weeks been like? I think I can sort of segment it into 3 things. The first was rapid reaction. The second was containment, and the third was normalization. And in terms of rapid reaction, we were very lucky. We were already operating a work from home policy with an IT infrastructure which supported that. And we've been doing that for 4 years. It's been part of our sort of employee value proposition. So this was just us spinning this up really, really quickly. We had a business continuity plan which was ready when we realized that this was going to be pretty serious. We just accelerated that, and we were actually out of our office a week before lockdown happened, and we were already up and working. So that was a really good piece of sort of success from our agency management team. What we did notice, though, was that the younger members of staff, they were struggling with the concept of working from home without that sort of intentional management you get when you're actually in the agency building. So we had to work we almost had to sort of work twice as hard with the younger members of staff that had never experienced this, and just, you know, keep our eyes on them, make sure that we had regular communications, regular check-ins, and all those sorts of things. And as such, within the first 2 weeks, we'd set up a sort of, I suppose, a plan to keep the company culture sort of alive and keep the way of working quite comfortable for everybody. So that sort of was the first couple of weeks, really, making sure that the team were all operating efficiently and that work was seamless, carrying on. If anybody had given me a call after 2.5 weeks and said, how's it going? Have you had any negative impact? I was pretty confident. I was, no, you know, these are big strategic projects that we tend to work on. The CapEx is normally signed off. It's already accounted for. You know, we are helping our clients to sort of prepare their brands for, you know, future sort of years. And as such, we weren't expecting any of our major projects to sort of succumb to, you know, economic or otherwise, you know, cultural pressure. After week 3, we started to see the decline, and within the space of about 2.5 to 3 weeks, 4 major projects were put on ice, and one of those was actually cancelled completely. And that sort of, you know, took us by surprise. And our revenue, interestingly, I was looking at Sammy's run rate on his graphic. Our revenues took a similar sort of hit. It wasn't quite as deep, but it took a similar hit. So we started to sort of try to sort of work hard to contain those client relationships, try to create a stronger forecast for the revenue, but most importantly, manage our cost base and manage our cash as well as we could do. And I will say, I mean, I don't mind sharing this with you, we're probably at the lowest points over the last sort of 2 or 3 months. We've probably been as low as 55% of our normal revenue. And as such, that's had a huge impact on us. We have had to take advantage of the government furlough scheme, of course, but it's enabled us to sort of keep the team together, not discuss redundancy or any other sort of permanent solutions to what could be a temporary problem. So that in the containment phase, we started to get the business under control, cash flow was good, and we could start to sort of double down on the relationships that we had. And then we started to get new business coming in, which was welcome and surprising. And what we actually noticed wasn't, it wasn't what I would call net new business from people that we'd never really heard from. It was from within recommendations and referrals from within our network. And over the course of sort of the last 5 weeks or so, we've put 5 new clients into the agency, including getting one signed off this morning, which is fantastic. These are brand and digital projects, which are all very, very exciting. They carry good fee. And whilst we are in a state of suspended sort of operation, so to speak, and actually saving money from the lockdown, these can help us to sort of recover some of the losses that we've actually made over the last 2 to 3 months. So actually we're sort of starting to feel slightly more confident about the future. And as Sammy said in his address, I think there is business out there. It's harder to get, but if we continue to build a very strong positioning around what our agency is able to do, we're able to have the right conversations with those clients. So that's the sort of the state of the nation. The next 14 weeks is going to be very interesting, because as we approach the end of the furlough scheme, my goal is to get the agency to a point where our run rate is at an acceptable point where we can start to bring people back and hopefully avert any sort of form of redundancy. So it's all about business planning now and new business. We decided to go slightly later on new business. We didn't want to appear to be tone deaf. We didn't want to go too early, that clients weren't ready to have conversations with organizations like us. And as a result of that, we've started to now start pushing outbound communications into the markets and into the vertical sectors that we're particularly strong in. You would have heard from Stephen saying that we work in the hospitality and the travel sector. That's taken an absolute pummeling over the last 3 or 4 months, and those were mainly the clients that have completely stopped all of their activity. So we've got to try to double down on the sectors which are less affected, and the B2B and B2C tech sector is less affected. The financial services sector seems to be less affected, and manufacturing clients are now coming back as well. So we're starting to see quite a lot of movement there. We're doing client development plans to just reinforce the relevancy of Mr. B and Friends in the worlds of our clients. And we're also starting to think about how we return back to the office in Bristol. And so we did an internal pulse survey the other day, and I think the general feeling is that September, when the kids go back to school, if they go back to school, providing we haven't had a second spike in all of this, that looks like how we will start to return. And as I'm sure has been discussed on this forum many times, it's going to be with a very, very relaxed work from home policy, where we're going to give people the ability to choose where they work. We've got quite a few commuters, and there's nobody seems to be very interested in public transport at the moment as well, for obvious reasons. The other thing that we have done as well is we've accelerated a product which we had in sort of play and had in our roadmap, really, around a brand acceleration program. So we do a lot of big strategic meaty projects with significant budgets, but also one of the things that we've constantly been discussed and questioned about is whether or not we can sort of take some of the expertise that we have and put it into a product which would actually help clients get to market a lot faster and for slightly less money as well. So that's been put into play, and over the course of the lockdown, we've used that product to close a couple of new accounts. So that's been quite interesting already. So we'll start to sort of turn the screw on that as we start our business development program. What have we learned? We've learned quite a lot. We've learned that we employ grown-ups, that's for sure. The people that within the agency, those on furlough, those not on furlough, those coming back from furlough, and we have been swapping people out, have been absolutely dedicated to the task, dedicated to client demands, expectations, deadlines, working to budgets and all those sorts of things, and they've delivered absolutely brilliant. So proud of the team. The second thing that we've learned is that we can operate much leaner than we have been in the past. We've noticed areas of profligacy within the agency, which has just made me question how we've been doing things over the last 13 years or so. We've also learned that our relationships with our clients are really excellent. We operate around 15 or 16 clients. We've got a few on pause, as I mentioned, but the ones that are still continuing are continuing really well and engaging with us. And I think actually the sort of distant situation that we're working at the moment has actually started to strengthen some of those relationships and dependencies. That's really great. I would say that the quality of our work hasn't suffered, but the process really has. And I think that clients aren't seeing how hard we're having to work to produce brilliant work. And just that lack of energy that you get from when you're in the room, when you're discussing strategy or ideas or concepts, it just cannot be replaced in a digital environment. And the last thing that I just want to finish up on really is that agency positioning is absolutely key here. And we've been doubling down on brand expertise as our message, and that has it cuts through. People really understand what we're good at and what our sweet spot is, and it enables us to have the right types of conversations and not sort of go down rabbit holes with clients that aren't really looking for what we can do. So it's been a really interesting period, the last 14 weeks, and we're just really focused on the next sort of 3 months in terms of sort of bringing ourselves back up to a recovery situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. Very, very insightful. In fact, all three presentations very insightful. I'm conscious of the fact that we have unfortunately run out of time, so therefore questions I'm going to have to be across manually after this call, if that's okay. So if you do have any questions, please send them in to me, and then I will share them with our three presenters, speakers today. Just to say that we have 13 events over the next 7 days. The big event this afternoon is with Sir Martin Sorrell. If you can join us, please do so. The link you will find either on the invites you've already got from Pimento, or you can get that from the MAAG website. So just Google MAAG agency, and you can then click for that presentation. And as I say, we'll be sharing both the presentations you've seen today and the video with yourselves. And I'll also be launching our program around helping you to get your home working situation and your flexible working situation aligned. Loads of questions I've got here, so I'm really sorry, but I didn't want to shorten the presentations because they were all very insightful. So thank you to our presenters. Have a great week, and obviously I look forward to seeing you next Wednesday. And in the meantime, keep driving that new business in, all of you, and keep collaborating, because I think that's at the heart of what we need to do over the next 14 weeks. Thank you very much. Cheers. Bye-bye.